everyone, this is Rachel. Thanks for clicking on my video. And I came in today with a few updates from the police. Now, the updates that I am going to provide you, a lot of them are information that we already know. But the reason why I'm doing this is because the police have filled in some empty spaces for us and created a timeline that we can follow that helps us make sense of when things happen, how it happened, and a few more details of what happened. So y'all, I'm actually have my phone up, and I'm not one of those type of people that like to just read the story to you, because when I'm listening to someone read a story, I'm thinking to myself, okay, if she's going to read it to me, I could have just went to it and found it myself and read it myself. So what I'm going to do is there are going to be a few pauses as I look down to get to the next area that is of interest to us. So let me just get started. So we all know that Tim is in jail for allegedly conspiring to have Andre killed. So I want to go back a little bit, and I want to go back to how Andre came to be staying with his grandmother. Now, like us, most of us, Andre was one of those kids that in the summer, his mother sent him to spend the summers with his grandmother, which we all know is Miss Robbie. There came a point, just like I said in one of my videos, where Andre was acting bad in school. So the mother sent him to live with Miss Robbie in 2010. And I guess they talked on the phone. They decided that, by Miss Robbie being a grandmother and having, time on her hands, having a restaurant where he could work, that living with her would be a better option for Andre. Now, like I mentioned in another video, Andre was not getting into criminal trouble. It was just fighting and being unruly in school. And sometimes as the mother of a son, if you're a single mother and things get out of hand, you reach out for help. And that's exactly what Andre's mother did. So she sent Andre to live with Miss Robbie in 2010. And he became part of the Sweetie Pies cast, a paid cast member, in 2011. Now, again, y'all, I'm looking down at my phone. Okay, so, we all watched Andre. We grew to love him on Sweetie Pies. But in the background, these are the things that were occurring. So we watched him struggle to graduate, and then Miss Robbie, getting him tutors and, a counselor that he can sit down and talk over his problems with and things that he felt that was holding him back from graduating. But we all know that eventually Andre graduated in 2013. Now, they say that he went on to be on the show. In around 2015, Andre actually got kicked off the show. And the reason why they're saying that he got kicked off the show is because he had posted some pictures of himself with a weapon on Facebook and allegedly some marijuana. And I guess the production crew went to Andre and asked Andre to take the pictures down. Now, Andre refused to take them down. I guess he was a young man and said, well, I'm not the one that had the marijuana, but he did have a weapon. It was my friends in the picture that had the marijuana, so he didn't take it down. And because he didn't take it down, that's why he got kicked off the show. So after Andre graduated, and after I guess he got kicked off the show, he moved back for a few months to where he came from in Texas. But he was encouraged to return to St. Louis in September of 2014 by his uncle, Tim. Okay? When he returned to St. Louis this time, Miss Robbie actually paid for an apartment for Andre. He didn't stay in her house. She paid for an apartment. Um, she actually paid his tuition to attend a local university there. And I guess, that was the plan. Come back to St. Louis. Miss Robbie said, I'll put you up in an apartment. You've graduated from school, so I'll pay for you to go to community college. But here's what happened when he went to school. So he stopped attending classes regularly and basically dropped out. And the apartment that Miss Robbie rented, the landlord was getting on Andre because I guess people were reporting that there was the smell of marijuana coming out of his apartment. Now, I'm pretty sure where Miss Robbie probably put him up at, it was like, in a nice neighborhood, decent apartment building, probably a very nice apartment building. And they wasn't having that marijuana smoking in their apartment. So Andre had to leave the apartment. So after that, he rented a room in a boarding house for $120 a month. And he continued to work at Sweetie Pie's up until around May of 2015. And around that time is around the time that Miss Robbie's house was broken into. So during that time, this is what was going on with Andre. Andre requested his final check from Sweetie Pie's, and he left the city. And he didn't return to St. Louis for about 9 months. He explained to the police later on because when the money came up missing, the police suspected that Andre did it. Okay? So when they contacted Andre and basically asked him, I guess, why did you leave the city? Andre said, I left for just that reason. Because family members back in St. Louis thought that he had stolen the money. Okay? So at the time when all of this was occurring, when Andre was explaining why he left and the fact that he was gone for those several months, then the story goes to the police and what was occurring with them at that time. So there was an investigator that after Miss Robbie reported that her house was broken into, he gives an account of what he witnessed when he entered Miss Robbie's house. So he said immediately when he walked in, he said that Miss Robbie's house was completely ransacked. Every closet was open, every drawer was rummaged through, and there was shit all over her house. He said that according to Miss Robbie, 2 handguns and at least $200,000 in cash, bottles of alcohol, and gold and diamond jewelry were all missing. Mink coats and designer clothes were thrown all over the house. They didn't steal those. They just threw them all over the house. Miss Robbie explained to the police, I guess, when they asked her, why would you have this amount of money in the house? And she said that it's a holdover from when she was younger. She said that when she used to be performing, that she would keep a certain amount of cash in her boot and she would take it home and I guess put it in her safe and hide it throughout her house. Miss Robbie also advised the police when they were there that she thought whoever broke into her house must have known her alarm code. And Miss Robbie had her reasons for believing that. And she said that only a few close family members had access to her home. Tim was one and Andre was another because Andre had been living with her. So because of that, that's what made the police look towards Andre. So basically, the police began to investigate Andre because he had gone back to, where he came from in Texas, and he had been gone for a few months. It made them even doubly suspicious. But remember, Andre said that the reason why that he left is because he just felt like everybody was blaming him. He also had told the family members in St. Louis that he had a gig for his little rap group, and he had, I guess, left town originally to do that and then headed on back to Texas. So police also reported that they had seen Andre on Facebook, with what they thought was a large sums of money. And it was posted on Facebook. They said it was money and new clothes. So again, it made them even more suspicious of them. Okay, so I guess they got back in touch with Andre, and Andre explained that the money that he had, it wasn't part of that. Like he told them he didn't do it. And it was some money that I guess a girlfriend of his had given to him. And I think him and the girlfriend were going to be getting an apartment. And I guess he was on Facebook fronting with probably the rent and security deposit, y'all. Y'all know how young people are. They'll have some money, they'll be fronting with it, but that money is already spent. I have had a young man, son at that age, and I know how they are. So I'm not saying that he couldn't have took it, but I'm just thinking of, how young men get on when they're at that age, get on Facebook or social media with money that's already spent, but it's flexing, okay? So Andre had some charges in Texas for, I guess, fighting. So he wasn't allowed to leave Texas at a certain point. But when those charges were cleared up, he left Texas and went back to St. Louis to speak to the St. Louis police about them suspecting him stealing from his grandmother. Okay. And y'all, I'm skipping down to the story because I already explained about the girlfriend and that him and the girlfriend were, going to be moving to Florida. That's where I guess that money came from and all of that. So I'm moving down. Okay, now during this time of the break-in, when they were suspecting Andre, Tim was living in California. And when Andre got back to St. Louis and he sat down to talk to the police, he told them that he believed that Tim orchestrated the break-in of his mother's house. Okay? So Andre went on to explain to them that at the very time that Miss Robbie's house was broken into, that Miss Robbie was trying to remove Tim from any Sweetie Pie's business ventures because of, him taking that money from her, going to open up those restaurants. So she was actually in the process of getting all that done. And I guess, that suing him for that $100 million, all of that was going on. So it led Andre to believe, since he hadn't done it, that it was something that Tim had done. So what happened when Andre, excuse me, y'all, when Andre was speaking to the authorities when he had returned to St. Louis, is they asked him to take a polygraph test. And he did. So the results of the polygraph test were inconclusive. They neither said Andre was guilty, nor did they say that he was innocent. But what Andre told them is the night before he had come in for the interview with them, he had been up late, smoking marijuana with his friends, and he wanted to be able to come back and do the polygraph again because he knew that he had not took the money. And y'all, the police agreed. So what they told him to do is return, later on. I guess they gave him a time frame where the marijuana would be out of his system and advised him not to smoke anymore. So when you come back, you can take this lie detector test and we can get a true reading on it. The police agreed with him. Now, y'all, this polygraph was given on March 10th. Okay? So Andre goes home to do what the police told him to do, and 4 days later, he is killed. Okay? Now, y'all, this is where I'm gonna put down my notes and just speak freely about what I feel about the additional holes that the police filled in with the polygraph that Andre took. See, we didn't know that happened. We knew pretty much that we thought Tim orchestrated it. So here's what I feel like. I feel like that Andre, because of the things that happened when he was in St. Louis before he went back home, that he has some suspicions about Tim. And when everything hit the fan with Miss Robbie's house being robbed, and then everybody pointing a finger at him, and most probably Tim, putting all the blame on Andre. Andre, when you haven't done something, and especially when you're young and you've argued your case and still nobody believes you, your family doesn't believe you, and most definitely the police don't believe you, you give up. You just like, well, I'm just gonna leave. Nobody believes me, whatever. But always in the back of Andre's mind, he felt that Tim did it, that he orchestrated it. So when he took that polygraph test and they told him it was inconclusive, he wanted to take another one, and the police agreed with him. So what I'm thinking is, since we know that all of these details about Tim and Terica and the insurance and all of that, did Tim get wind of Andre's inconclusive polygraph test? Did Tim know that Andre was going to go back at a later date, giving himself enough time to get the marijuana out of his system? And then when he went back, clear-headed, no marijuana in his system, and the police began to question him about, did you, Andre, take the money from your grandmother's house? And Andre said no, and he passed that question. Who do you believe had something to do with it? Or are you sure, Andre, you had nothing to do with, the robbery of your grandmother's house? And Andre said no, and passed that question. That would rule Andre out. And then Andre had already told him, once you rule me out, then you need to go look at Tim. Because if we're the only two that had a code to Miss Robbie's security system, okay, you've ruled me out. All right. So the next thing is to go to Tim and do the same thing that you did to me as far as giving him a polygraph test. Do it to him. And y'all, I believe that that's the motive right there. Tim didn't want Andre to go back and pass that polygraph test. Families talk, and the family, Andre told someone that he was taking a polygraph test to prove that he didn't do it. Families talk, and that information will be like, girl, that boy went back up to St. Louis. He's trying to prove that he didn't take his grandmother's money. That boy was willing to take a polygraph because he loved his grandmother so much. So when Andre came back and he passed it, what would have happened to Tim if he went in, took the polygraph test, and failed it? Then everything would be pointing to him. And that was the motive, y'all. That's what I believe it was. Now, I don't know how y'all feel about that, but the police are beginning to fill in. You know how there were little holes in the story? And we were like, well, what about this? And when did this happen? And why did Andre leave? That did look suspicious. Well, they're explaining why now. Y'all, I can't talk sometimes when I'm reporting this story, because every time I look at his face, and I'm talking about Andre, when I look at Tim, I want to slap the fuck out of him and beat his ass for what he allegedly did to Andre. But when I look at Andre and think about that he was accused of stealing the money, it just makes the story even sadder, because knowing that he went in to take a polygraph, he was trying to prove that he didn't take the money. And that's why, once again, I will say that I do not believe that Andre took that money. He voluntarily took the test that they offered him. He voluntarily agreed to come back when it was inconclusive. He was trying. The only problem is, 4 days after he took that polygraph test, his uncle allegedly had him killed. So y'all, that's the end of my video. I just wanted to bring y'all that little bit of news that I had heard, the updates from the police. And I'm pretty sure that the more this case is looked at by the authorities, the more information is going to drip, drip, drip out to us. But it makes me feel good, you know, knowing that Andre, he took that polygraph test. That speaks to his character for me, because I can only imagine what he felt like when everybody was accusing him and he knew he hadn't did it. And also knowing that he had some feelings about Tim, you know, going so far as to tell his mother and his sister that if anything ever happens to me, y'all need to be looking at Tim. And y'all, isn't that where we are now? So I want y'all to put down in the comments, you know, what you think about, you know, the little information that the police have updated the case with. And also, I wanted to add that I am still going to do the live with Tyrone. The other person did not get back to me on a date, you know, that they would be available, a date or time. So I'm going to do it, started with Tyrone. And if she's out there when we go live, we can bring her in. So Tyrone, I am going to be doing the live sometime this weekend. So once I figure out a time, I will email that information to you. And then the other person, if you see us live, we can invite you into the chat. And with that, y'all, as always, thanks for watching my video. And I will see you guys in the next one. Stay safe now. Bye-bye.